PHMS rock ups. Look at what we have here. It's Unbox. You've never seen one of those on this channel before. Probably wondering what's in here unless you saw the thumbnail. Here it is. We're gonna show you. We're gonna show me, actually, is what's gonna happen because I'm the only one in the room who doesn't know what this is. Yeah. Oh yeah, it is a P-40. And this is not the P-40 we did a while back, which was a 1.4 meter. This is a 980 millimeter. So I'm excited about this because this thing has all the regular features of the bigger planes, but it just happens to be smaller. And so for that reason, I'm quite excited to see this. This has flaps and retracts, and it's being done by FMS with Reflex V2, which means that we are gonna be able to fly this thing with stabilization and a cheaper receiver. But keep in mind, as we 70 amp ESC, as we dig into this plane, we're gonna be eventually talking about the radio setup. We're gonna use the NX8, which we've been using for some time. We're gonna be pairing it up with an AR 8020T. Now this is not to be confused with an 8320T, which has the stabilization. So this doesn't have the stabilization built in. We're gonna use a reflex for that. But this gives us 8 channels. Now, alternatively, if you wanna use safe and AS3X, you could use one of these two choices, an AR 630 or 631. The 630 has no antenna and then end pins instead of top pins like this one. I figure for like $5 more, this is a better value because you get the external antenna, you can get it away from all the action. But in tight situations, like a 1,000 millimeter plane, you might wanna go for the smaller. And then the AR 637T, which of course adds the functionality of this cord coming in for voltage of your pack, okay? Unless you intend to put in an avian ESC for thrust reverse, which is probably a little strange on this plane, you can do this and then you'll get your voltage from your pack through the avian, okay? But of course that would require an upgrade. I just like to show you that stuff at the beginning because this is our plan. The reason I like this for this plane, and you're probably thinking, well, why do you need an 8-channel receiver for a 6-channel plane? Because you have throttle, elevator, ailerons, rudder, retracts, flaps, did I say that right? And then channel for controlling on and off. Stabilizer on, stabilizer off, stabilizer and auto leveling on. So that would be into your 7th channel. Now, we also recently learned when we did our
the Rafale,
80 millimeter Rafale, that you can actually change the state of your reflex by using any of the channels you want, plugging into the mode, changing the state to, say you want it always on stabilizer, so you always want like AS3X on, or you always want the thing to just have stabilization, or you always want auto leveling, which I would highly recommend against, and I'll explain why in a minute. Then all you have to do is just switch it to the mode you want and then unplug it, and it stays there even after you power cycle it, which is very cool. And honestly, one of the functions I didn't even understand existed in the Reflex V2. Now, it may not have previously in the Reflex V1, but honestly, we never had a plane that had the Reflex V1. We've only ever done it with V2. Okay, so anyway, so that gives us all the channels and the ability to turn it on and off. Now, why do you want the ability to turn it on and off? That's important, and we're gonna talk about that as we dig into this plane a little bit more. But the reason you wanna have it turn on and off, especially if you're a beginner plane, beginner pilot, is because when you have the ability to take off with auto leveling and okay, I'm comfortable, I'm ready to do a loop or a roll, then you can turn that off, do the loop or roll. Oh no, I'm concerned, turn back auto leveling on, it will level your plane. But you wanna be able to turn it off because it also limits your bank angles and your pitch angles. And so what that does is it limits the way the plane can fly. It stops you from turning over upside down, so it makes it a little bit less exciting. But then also, I don't want to be limited to the flight envelope. So if I have a tight turn I need to make, I want to be able to accomplish that with all 3 axes of full control. So if I come up against a tree line, or the wind gets very intense, or there's a thermal that I didn't expect and the plane starts getting pulled up into the air, which it's, you know, I mean, that's probably overstating what's going to happen on a plane of this size, but practically speaking, if you got into a thermal, it could, you know, create a flyaway condition. And with auto leveling, you want to be careful about that. So if you turn that off, then you can go into the either unstabilized or stabilized mode, and you can do what you need to do. So keep in mind, with auto leveling, on most flight controllers, you're going to get stabilization regardless. The auto leveling will not work without the stabilization feature. You can actually do that if you do full safe, or safe select with forward programming on any of the AS3X equipped planes, but I don't recommend it. I would always use stabilization. All right, cool. All right, we're gonna get right back to it. Okay, so it's a tractor prop driven, 3 blades, looks beautiful. You can see here on the side of the box. As with all the FMS gear we've done, this thing comes with a very good box, very good shipping, powerful brushless motor, 3648 kV 770 motor, combined with the 70 amp ESC like we talked about here. Now, if you guys don't know what these measurements mean, that means that it's 36 millimeters wide by 48 millimeters long. And I could be flipping those, it really doesn't make a big difference, but just understand that that's 2 of the dimensions. So if you imagine a box, it's actually a cylinder in this case, because it speaks to the shape of the motor, which is round. And you're measuring this axis and then this axis. So it spins like this. And that's how you can tell the size physically. But then you can tell the speed with kV. Now, kV is not to be confused with kilovolts, which I used to often do that and I got very confused. It means 1,000 rotations per volt. So that's why kV. So K means kilo, and that means 1,000 volts, or 1,000 per volt, okay? Which normally when you have a per, you would have a P in the middle. So of course, this is one of these acronyms within the hobby world that's totally asinine because it's the same acronym as a real acronym, and yet there's no real delimitation, but that's fine, we've learned it. And so kV means that for every 1 volt, it will go 770 revolutions per minute, so RPMs. So that means if you're running on 4S, then you have like 14 volts, so 14 times 770. That's how fast it would, unloaded, meaning it would spin, you know, like with no prop on it. Because if you spin a prop that fast with a prop on it, the prop would probably break. It would fling out like this. Okay, getting into the box. And you're here on Brian Phillips RC, probably because you want to know if this is a good product, if you would like to buy it for yourself or somebody as a gift for Christmas. Christmas is coming up. Which way do we have it? I think I need to flip upside down.
Yep.
Ah, already dropped a piece, guys. It's the back half of the spinner. Okay, so we'll just leave that right there. And I definitely did have it upside down. So here on Brian Phillips RC, what do we offer you? We unbox the planes, we put them together, and then we do radio setup. So we call it Unbox Build Radio Setup. And you may have noticed that we split those videos in half. We had many people suggest that we do that for many years, and we just got to the point where we're gonna do it again. We used to do it a long time ago, and then we got into just doing them all as one video, and it just, I don't know. Through the nature of YouTube algorithm, we've tried to respond as much as possible. So if you guys are watching this, we always release this right before the maiden, like 1 minute before, so you can find it really easy. If you're watching the unbox, the flight should be available. And if there's ever a technical glitch, we err on the side of having the video publish for flight and then this to follow. Okay, so in terms of packaging, everything looks fine. This spinner piece did pop out on us, so that's kind of weird. I'm not sure why. Let's just do this one piece at a time here. Oh yeah, little drop tank, looks simple.
Cute.
Yeah, it is. Okay, we got an instruction manual that is folded. Ew. We don't like folded manuals. By the way, there is an insert in here that speaks to the setup of before updating the program, apply power to the reflex, okay? Could you read that for me, Megan?
Yes, it says before updating the program, apply power to the reflex.
Cheater.
Learn Chinese.
We're just gonna put this in here. So that's the reflex manual. It explains how to set it up, but you don't have to set it up if it's coming to you like this. It will already be set up.
Yeah, we've never had to.
We've never had to program it. Always comes with the USB A to C cable, which we'll get to eventually. Speak of the devil.
Eventually.
USB A to C, that speaks to the end types. USB A, of course, is the blocky end that you're used to seeing from years past. And then USB C, of course, is like this. Or if you're an Apple user, then who knows what that thing is.
We had to alienate like.
Okay, continuing onward, we have the other half of the spinner. Why is the spinner not in a bag?
I don't know.
Seems like that should be in a bag.
A little bit.
That'd be one of the weirdest nuances we've seen from FMS so far, which, to be honest with you, we've been super happy with FMS packaging. We've never had a big problem. Oh boy, camera crew's gonna be pissed off. Look. Yeah, I know. We have to put all those things on. That sucks. We were just talking about how easy this one would be. chain out. Why are they not put on? I don't understand. Ooh, yeah, this wing looks really good. Nice dihedral in the wing. Okay. Oh, there are LEDs.
Oh.
I didn't think there were LEDs on this thing, but there are evidently LEDs. Nice. Okay, and then underneath we've got the 90-degree folding retracts, which means that the bogie, when it goes into its parking position, it actually swivels, which it swivels by that. So that's pretty cool. It hits that little ledge and then turns. So 9-gram digital metal gear servos. Metal gear servos on all the servos. That's really incredible. I wish all the manufacturers of airplanes would just start using metal gear servos, because really that's probably what they should have. Okay, so we got some tape holding down the connections, which is a breakout board that takes all the cables from the servos and neatens them up so that it's a little bit easier to work with. I don't think the reflex is down here on this one. It just happens to be a breakout board. Okay, so continuing onward, we got a prop here. I usually try to take this stuff out first so I don't miss it. Oh, there's a wing joiner in there. Beautiful 3-bladed prop. Really nice finish on that. Size on this prop is 10.5 by 7. So that speaks to 10.5 if this were a circle. And then 7 inches of pitch, okay? And you're like, well, what does 7 inches of pitch means? For the one revolution, it will move forward 7 inches, okay? So you can imagine if it moved forward 10 inches, it would have a more steep pitch. If it moved forward 1 inch, then it would have a very shallow pitch, okay? All right, so just kind of pulling pieces out. There's one more piece in here. I can't get it without actually flipping the fuselage, okay? So it goes to the elevator and horizontal stab. Looks really nice. Pinch hinge design here, so very simplistic, but nice and detailed. Not a lot of big misses on color matches, although this looks like a really pretty terrible match at this point. No, it's actually not at all.
Yeah.
I thought it was a bad match, but then I got it close and it looks about right. Okay, cool. I love to be proven wrong when it's to the advantage of the plane. Oh yeah, look at that beautiful one. Uh-oh, cover your eyes, children. The detailed art. Okay, so we have our spinner prop adapter here. Goodness gracious, that's threaded a lot. There's your motor, okay. That looks really good. Ooh, no. No, don't take my paint. Okay, good. I love the shark, or the tiger mouth, or the shark mouth. And then why is there a piece of foam there? I wonder if they meant to do that, or if that was just a fluke. Maybe that was, it's kind of statically charged. Okay, ball link here. Steerable tail wheel. Looks like a pretty simple design. Obviously rock hard. 4 screws to receive the wing. Look pretty simple. Nice look inside the canopy there. See that? Inside the cockpit. Pull that open. Looks good. Mid-grade straps. Servos look fine. Looks like FMS 092, so it's a 9-gram servo. Don't know if it's digital. Don't know if it's metal gear. I would assume it's probably digital and metal gear since the other ones were. I'm just gonna lay that piece of metal down there. See, it's not a huge plane, guys. It's a really good sized plane. Okay, so let's lay that down and just let it flop over. Now I have to get something out of here. Don't miss the stuff that's in the pockets. Sometimes this will happen. I'm gonna close this in here first. Then I can flip this out. That's what I'm talking about, guys. That thing was stuck in ours. Don't miss this. You do need that. Yep, so it's hollow tube. Sounds like carbon fiber to me. Carbon fiber wing joiner for the tail feathers. Had to push it in pretty hard too. So that'll obviously go on either side of the fuselage. All right, cool. So we're gonna take a second, clean up the pieces and come right back. Okay, so we were just going through the nut sacks and bolt sacks, me and the camera crew. And we were perusing the manual for safety, you know, ideas, tips. Of course, like we always because do. The Chinese always have some good ideas. So here's their newest idea. And this is verbatim. I am not making this up. We're gonna show you when I'm done. Never lick or place any portion of your model in your mouth, as it could cause serious injury or even death. right there.
It does. That's very important.
I don't know. Sometimes that's the best part. So we're just going to continue onward with this build. We have to put we've got a plane stand. Thanks, Tom. We've got some screwdrivers. Thanks, Tom. He's probably like, I'm never going to send them guys anything again. We've put some stickers on this too. And so I turned the box, as you can see. It shows kind of the direction that you put them on. And I believe the way this goes is that the lettering would be inboard here. And then the sticker would go here. So I don't know if there's some magical way to do this, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to just start with sizing up the first one. I think usually it's kind of centered a little bit more, but whatever. I'll just do that. And then I'm going to put this on the inboard a little bit, inboard portion of the wing or of the prop. Now, if you want to try to make these even, the easiest way to do it is to replicate the same position. So I guess I probably should have got a marker too, huh? Because we can use a marker to locate the start and end points on each of them. Huh?
I thought you were just gonna eyeball it.
No, you don't want to eyeball this because it's gonna spin and you'll see this weird like wiggle. You don't want it to look like that. That'd be bad. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this. I'm just gonna mark like the center location of each. So center to center, or edge and edge to edge and edge. Okay. So that's the way it's gonna be located. And then what I can do as my next reference is I can make a reference mark for the yellow. Okay, so that's our yellow. Right, so you see then when I line up the next prop blade, I can just replicate that. At least close, it's not gonna be perfect. So, ooh, these decals are just regular sticky decals. They're not like water decals or anything weird. So then just hold those in the same position, and then I want the, oh no, I put that upside down, didn't I? No, I did it right. So these details are details that, you know, most of you guys can probably figure out without any help at all. In fact, this whole build is quite simple. But the reason we do the build is because a lot of you newer pilots and newer RC enthusiasts are probably going to ask a lot of questions like, hey, what is the proper protocol for installing the prop? Or what do I do? How do I figure out what type of battery? And that's the next thing too we can talk about while I'm applying these decals. We are going to be using 2200 4S because that's what it calls out in the manual. If you want to just show them that real quick, I'm just putting on the third set. It's exactly the same process. By the way, they do give you a set of 4 of these decals in case you make a mistake on one of them. Then you can peel it off and get it right, which is kind of nice that they give you an extra. I don't really know why they give you an extra. Maybe they also use that same kit for 4-bladed props on other planes.
I like the props that have those details.
Yeah, I do too.
On them, I think it's cool.
It looks really cool. The only problem is sometimes those decals will lift.
Yeah.
And they can cause an imbalance on the props if you don't do it right. Okay, so as you can see, if you rub them really, really well, then the backing will disappear somewhat, and you've got that cool, super detailed. And then you got one set extra for future reference. Okay, so then we've got these came in a package, these came in a package, this came in a package, and this is still in the package, the screws. Then there was 2 gun sets that was not in a package at all, or were they?
They were not. They were just in the bigger bag that had all the smaller nut sacks in it.
Okie dokie. All right, so the next step, I think I want to go ahead and start by assembling the fuse because it's just so dang simple. So we got this plane stands probably set a little bit wide. If you have one of these Robart plane stands and you're having trouble sliding these down, one thing you can do is put some baby powder on these shafts and then work it in.
Usually you don't powder your shaft before you work it in.
Well, to all their own. So I'm going to take this now and I'm going to take this first. This is keyed here and here. So we'll just slide that back right like that. Makes a nice tight fit. Then the prop goes in, and now just pay special attention to how I slide this in. It's not hard, but you have to get it down so that it sits into the pocket. Okay. Once it's in the pocket, I use one thumb to kind of brace it, and then I just kind of hold on to stuff. And this is where it gets a little tricky. Sometimes it'll want to spin the motor. If it does, that's when it's really hard. Okay. So now we need to use a simple screwdriver to actually go in and tighten that. So I'm going to grab a 2mm nut driver, or not nut driver, but just this happens to be the one I assume we're going to use on the rest of it. So I'm going to grab this, torque it down quite tight. Okay. And then we can take this, which of course is the spinner, and just drop it down on there. It looks very nice. Okay, now we need to put a screw in to hold the spinner on the outside. And I see that there's a short and a short and a long and a long and a long and a long and a long. So we obviously need the two shorts, or one of the two shorts. FMS is good about giving extras.
I think you need a long.
Why?
Because I think you need 2 shorts for the vertical or the horizontal stabilizer, and then 4 for the wing. And then
Okay, so 4 for the wing, 1 for the spinner. Well, then what are those for? I think this is one extra for the wings, and 1 extra for the spinner, and 1 extra for the tail. I could be wrong, but let's do the tail first in that case. Let's do the tail first. The spinner's gonna pop off, so let's do the tail first. Or, here's a good way to tell. You can read the manual, which we're not gonna do.
no.
We're gonna put this in there, okay? That doesn't fit very good. We're gonna put the long one in there. It's just strangely large head on it.
There's like those little ones in there, but that can't be.
No, that's for these, for sure. They came in different sets.
Okay.
I think it's that one. Now, how do you tell? Because what you can do is you can take and start the screw, and then you can line it up where it's gonna hit. And look at that, that's a pretty good depth.
That's a shorty?
Yep, that's pretty much perfect. That's what it is. It's the long one would not go in, it would penetrate too far. If you over penetrate, it can cause all sorts of problems.
Yeah, that's true. Would not be good.
You don't want to screw so hard that you break it.
No.
Okay. So we'll just go ahead and tighten that up. Number 2, 2mm driver here. Bring it in until it's tight. Brace it with the prop. Torque it down. Okay, cool.
Okay.
Looks absolutely fantastic. The P-40 is one of the few with a sharp nose cone, which is kind of strange. You don't think about that on these warbirds. You'd think more of them do, but they don't. Okay, so now the tail, I'll just go ahead and flip this around on the plane stand because we've got the extra leg out there and make it hard to work with. And flip this sideways, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna assemble the wings. Now, how do you tell which side's up and down? Obviously this is down and this is up, and it's gonna slide together like this until such a time that it goes all the way together, okay? But we can't slide it into the fuse that way. So we'll just take it back apart. Kind of want to put the bottom side in first so you guys can see good. Slip it onto the assembly there. You see how it's gonna want to eat into the foam. So just be careful so that you don't crush it nastily. Then you got to do this at some point. So I'm gonna slide this in over here. Get it all the way down where it belongs. Now this one, you're gonna have to crush it nastily no matter what, because you've got 2 different alignment points you have to meet up. But you can still pull back a little bit as you go, and then once you have the front lip in, drop it down in there and align it with the tail. The other half of the tail, okay?
Nice.
Good fit, really good fit. Okay, now I'm gonna flip this over on its belly, or on its back so I can see the belly side. And now we just need to put the screws in to the bottom. Now, what do we use? Probably the black screws, like I expected. These are Phillips tips, or Phillips screws. So we'll go ahead and switch gears to a Phillips screwdriver. Use the China style. We used to get China style screwdrivers all the time, but now we don't for whatever reason.
Because we quit doing dynamos.
What? They were so high quality.
I know, I miss
High
those
quality RC
days.
products. Seriously, if there is not a better salesman for other brands than Dynam, I don't know what there is. Because they are so bad. And yet, you know what? They're fun and they do have a few that are okay.
They do. And they have
And if you like project
too.
planes, it's one thing. But to be honest, guys, just spend the extra $30 and you will be infinitely happier. Infinitely happier. And if you don't have $30 more, I'm gonna just tell you this. In this hobby, $30 is like an evaporation on water. It just happens. So you will find that out really quick. Now that being said, if you're on a tight budget, save the $30.
Yeah.
The difference in price point makes a huge difference in quality. And build time and all those things. Okay, so the tail's built. Look how easy that was, guys. If this is a Dynam, I would have already said at least 200 bad words off camera and thrown 3 boxes.
It'd be dark out already.
And I would have had to fix windows. Okay, so we're gonna build this wing. It does remind me of Dynam, I must say, but I'm gonna resist the urge to throw things. Hold on, let's put the ordnance on. Oh, it's so cool. Oh, it goes on the wing.
Oh.
Yes. So cool. And yet it's going to be in the way totally. I just want it out of my way. Camera crew, will you pick up that thing?
Yes,
Thank you.
will.
Okay, so normally when you buy an FMS plane, you're going to get extra screws, and they are very good to us about extra screws. I don't know why they're so anal about always giving extra screws, but I love it. And so if all other manufacturers could just go ahead and copy that, that would be great, and we would appreciate it from you too. Now, how often do we need an extra screw? Do you want to know the only time we ever needed extra screws? Dynams. No, dancing wings.
Oh,
we were totally
yeah.
shorted screws.
We have been on them.
And so this is our moment for the shameless plug. Okay, because we work with a company called RTL Fasteners, and we have drawers of screws. So if you ever get in a situation where you're like, I wish I had a screw, and yet I cannot find, you know, like at the local hobby shops, you can go and get whatever you needed. Show them from the bottom. Oh yeah. Tons of different screws, and these are kits. You can follow the links, buy those for yourself. They're expensive, guys, because they're not crappy Chinese hardware, okay? They could be crappy Chinese, I don't even know. But the thing is,
they're not crappy though.
all I can say is that these kits are well put together. Kit 743, for instance, metric kit 743. There was actually 2 in one kit. And this is a kit 9155, 9155. That's one kit. And then the mothership. Got another one in here. And then we've got shelf liner. Everybody needs shelf liner next to their RTL fasteners kits. So now, when you're thinking about where do I get these weird fasteners? First of all, if you're a pack rat like Brian Phillips RC, you still need that stuff.
Yeah.
Because I literally keep every screw in every bag that comes out of these airplanes. My wife loves it. She is like, I just want to encourage you today by saying, thank God you saved 4,000 plastic bags with single screws in them.
Right.
No. Because if we ever needed to warm the house through a few weeks of downtime, then we could just burn those sacks.
Toxic plastic bags.
That's all right.
That'd
Nobody needs to breathe clean air. So anyway, getting back to the point, RTL fasteners. Follow the link in the video description below. May not be in the video description below, but you can always, if you want to support our channel, the best thing you can do is watch the videos, like them, come back, watch more videos. But really, even better, buy the awesome products that we talk about, promote, and whatever. Because we show you what they really do. And if they suck, we tell you that too. But it's pretty uncommon. We've only done a few that have been bad. And they usually are Dynams. But if you continue, and you're like, you know, I really don't like this P-40, Brian. It's cool, but I've got another P-40 that's the same size class, and I don't need that one right now. Well, maybe you want the 1.4. Well, just go to our playlist. You can see what we've got, or you can navigate over to www.brianphillipsrc.com, and you can help organize your thoughts because we do have a lot of videos. So you can find what you want there. You can watch the video. You can watch your radio setup. You can ask all those questions directly to the video by watching it. And then you can enjoy that and learn what you need to learn. And then you can ask what I didn't actually expressly tell you in the video, because otherwise I won't remember. And then you can buy it from the links there. But if you really like this plane, and this is gonna be a cool plane, I mean, obviously we think they're gonna be cool at this stage of the game usually. You're gonna see it fly. And you've already seen it fly if you're watching this far, my guess. So, very cool way to help support us is buying from the links in the video description below. That's how we get paid. That's how we make money on this channel. And yes, there's a little bit of ad revenue, but it's fleeting and it's based on YouTube and their stupidity. So, I should have said that out loud. I repent, Google. Please forgive us, Google. Mother Google ship. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now is I'm trying to get these guns mounted. I mean, decorative decorations that are shaped in cylinders with heat sinks and things.
Yes. Do you take that out or do you just slide them in?
I think it goes in and out like this. It slides down because it's like a plug, I think. Mine's glued a little bit, so yours might not be glued as much as mine. See what I'm doing? I'm kind of using the screwdriver to help pull the bottom down. Goodness gracious. Or do you even have to take it out?
Well, that's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of glue. It's got a little bit, it's a double-sided tape is what it is, okay? So once you get that out, then what you do is you take this thing that looks like it could shoot a projectile at amazing speed and possibly even damage another object. You put it right here, just like that. It's amazing, right?
It's very decorative.
It's decorative though, guys, not functioning.
No.
Okay, so if you're in the ATF, don't sick me on that. Okay, so we got a little bit of glue, it's clear, that's called foam to foam. Now foam to foam, why foam to foam? Why not mucilage? Mucilage is good too. It's actually cheaper per volume, but we've had mucilage come out brand new, dry.
Yep.
This stuff always seems to work. We never have problems with it. And by the way, this tube has lasted for about 17 and a half years. I'm just kidding, that maybe not quite that long. It's actually, we've gone through 2 tubes of this now in our RC career, right? Is this the second tube?
Yeah.
Or wait, is this a second tube?
I kind of think that is only the
That was like one of the only good things about Dynam is that we would get some glue once in a while. Cause like,
yeah, we did use a lot.
we did use a lot of glue on Dynams. But see, sometimes they would send like 6 bottles for a plane that needed 3, and then sometimes they would send like 1 bottle for a plane that needed 7.
Yep.
So you always ended a deficit no matter what.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is just double-sided tape that's holding that in. It feels pretty strong though, so don't be afraid. You're not gonna break it. And yeah, this is the only thing you have to glue. You can actually just leave these out if you decide they're not as cool as you like, or maybe you're like, I don't like guns.
Not into decorations.
I mean decorations. They might kill people. It's like, well, that's what happens when you go to war with a warbird sometimes. So anyway, warbirds. Warbirds are one of the very amazing parts of this hobby, this RC hobby of flying radio-controlled aircraft. And if you haven't done a lot of warbirds, or you may be a little bit reluctant to do warbirds, don't be afraid. They're not as hard as you might think. And if you've heard, oh, warbirds are hard to fly, well, to be honest, I don't really think they're especially hard to fly or especially easy to fly. But there is some P factor to worry about, which is like a torque load that you will get as you're spinning up the prop and getting ready to take off. And so you just need to be prepared to deal with that. It's not hard. Well, it's one of the more challenging things in the hobby when you're new, but it's not an especially hard thing to deal with because you're gonna have P factor on any tractor propped plane, and the more powerful it is, then the more intense it's gonna be, and that's gonna wanna spin your plane on takeoff and have you crash. Now this plane's not gonna probably be anything too crazy, but it is a warbird. Okay, so those simulated guns look really cool. All right, so we also have this, I believe this is a pitot tube. Pitot tube, what's a pitot tube, camera crew?
It's a sensor of some sort.
It is an airspeed sensor, a pitot tube. I believe this is a pitot tube. It's got a little angle on it, on there. And I'm just pushing my little screws out of the way because they're kind of getting in the way. I probably should have put the decorative stuff on last, but we just like to do it the hard way. I do it the hardest possible way.
Whatever's going to be the most
Ooh,
frustrating.
Yeah, there you go. Maximum frustration here on Brian Phillips RC. So if you're here to see the maximum frustration, however long it takes us to do it, you can probably do it in half the time or better, and that is not an exaggeration. The reason for that is because obviously when we film, we try to go into a lot of details to answer some of the questions that you probably don't need to ask, but then maybe the new guy does. And if you're the new guy, welcome to Brian Phillips RC. We're glad that you're here with us. We love to help you walk through this challenging feat of expertise. Is that the way it goes? Is it up or down? Can you tell from the pictures? I can't remember. I wonder if the manual's kind of crappy in the pictures on this.
Yeah, I don't remember.
It goes down.
Okay.
At least if the manual's right. So down is correct. So if you guys are new to the channel and you're kind of like a newer RC pilot, or you're a noob and you're like, hey, I feel really insufficient in this regard and I want to get better at it, but like I can't find a good club to get hooked up with, you know, or maybe I'm new and I don't have a huge budget, so I need some help making good decisions. Or hey, I've got a local hobby shop that sucks, and I can't get the help I want, and they're just jerks, and they act like we don't want to help this new pilot, which is funny because, you know, we have a couple of good hobby shops around our place where we live, and I kind of got that feeling from them when I started, at least one of them, and I was like, why would you ever do that?
Right.
You know, you should be like begging them to be excited about this hobby. It's like a new future customer. It's like an addict. It's like the drug dealer being like, you know, hey, don't try this drug. It's not that good. It's not that good. Yeah, you don't want this. Go get a cheeseburger. You know, you don't hear drug dealers saying that. At least the last time I checked. I have a lot of experience with this too. All right, so getting back to the point, we're gonna go ahead and slide our hand full of screws over here. Now this is gonna be the worst part of the build. As you can see, we've got these things and these things, okay? Now this one I have to assume is probably gonna go on the tail, and I would be correct in assuming that because I can see there's one opening. Show me the opening up close, please. See that? Mm-hmm. That's where the tail one goes. And it's going to be, they actually did include what looks like a driver, but it doesn't look like the driver that's right for this, which I don't quite understand. It is not. Why did they include this? What's that for? Is it for some part of the retract mechanism maybe? Because look, they gave us this, but it's not even the right size for anything. That's very strange. Okay, well, whatever. Thank you, FMS. We'll be sure to give that to somebody for Christmas. That was weird. Okay, so we have these. Now, how do you differentiate between which one goes on the flaps and which one goes on the ailerons? That is a great question, whoever thought of that. What you're gonna do is you're gonna take and line them up like this and say, okay, is there one of each in this kit? So line up the two holes and then see how long they are. Okay, looks like they're about the same length. And then line up the two holes and it looks like they're all the same length, okay? So what I glean from that is that the person that designed this kit said, hey, my boss said that I need to make a kit for 2 control surfaces that are of similar sizes. Okay, so there's 4 control surfaces on this wing. So I knew to include 2 kits. So why didn't you just make 1 kit with 4? Because that way they can grab from that kit and call it out for multiple models that have the same gray links. Okay, that's my assumption. All right, getting back to the point, now that makes it easier because all of the things are the same. So it should be easy, okay, hypothetically. Now, see how that's on this side? See how that's on that side? Okay, I don't know if that's right yet, by the way. Okay, I'm feeling that protrude through the other side. That might be another point we could check out because it looks like the lengths are the same. Okay, see what I mean? Mm-hmm. Okay, so then the ball joint goes on the outside. I'm honestly, guys, I'm just getting lucky on this, I think. Wait, is that right? Can you tell from that side? I can't tell. This might be one of those times where we actually look in the manual. See this?
But then you're matching
That's on the inside.
But you're matching up with all, like your control horn is on that side.
Yeah, but
and that side.
It's not about a good looks thing. It's about, I want to make sure we have clearances for the control ball joints and stuff. They do sometimes talk about this. Ah, see? What the heck is that? Somebody did it wrong there? I can't tell. Yeah, these ones here are pretty simple. They're talking about an old system here, okay? I'm not seeing a picture that really indicates what direction they go, do you? I don't. No. Okay, whatever. Okay. As expected, we have figured out. Not a big deal. Okay, so a couple tips. Hold this, swivel this in and out a couple of times. Get it ready to move because you're probably gonna have to make an adjustment, okay? So once you've turned it, you want that to be 90 degrees of the axis of this. Now, if you don't have ball joint pliers, now would be a good time to have some, okay? Do they say which hole to go into?
I do think it said 3rd.
How did you tell that?
Use the 3rd hole nearest the servo for a low rate setting.
For a single rate, use the 1st hole to achieve high rate setting. Okay, so here's what the manual is not saying. It's not saying to use the third hole or to use the last hole, okay, which is a confusing way to say it.
Right.
What they're saying is if you go to the outside hole, okay, which the ball joint's on the inside for us on this, the ball link. So I'm gonna slide in like this. Then I'm gonna twist it, okay? And then obviously this is gonna go somewhere. I'm not even gonna hook it up yet because it's really a waste of time to hook that up because I guarantee you it's coming back off. Because unless you're magic, you're not gonna know, okay? So I'm gonna take the same thing, I'm gonna grab and spin it a couple of times just to give me some freedom to get started. I'm gonna turn it flat compared to that. And I'm gonna slide this in the top hole, rotate it around, and then get that ready. Okay, so that looks pretty close, but it's not even screwed together on the back, so we'll just get these in place. But with each one, I'm gonna grab and do this. It would be easier with a pair of pliers to hold this flat, but we gotta start somewhere. Now what they mean is that the higher rate would be on the outside hole, meaning that you're gonna get more deflection here, and you're gonna get less deflection on that next hole down, and even less deflection on the next hole down, but you're gonna get more precision with the movements of your transmitter, okay? We are gonna use the transmitter to control that, but you do have a reflex V2 involved that may not be easily adjustable from the transmitter, so just keep that in mind, okay? Same thing here, just give it a couple of turns, and then we take this. I don't know if I'm doing the right side there. Nope, that's the wrong side there. That one needs to come in from this side. You guys see why I do that? You want this to never, okay, see this shaft that goes like this? You don't want this to be bound like that. So if it sits like this, that's bad. That'll create pressure on there. You don't want it to sit like this. That could potentially come out. You want it to be square. And this is squarer than if it was over here, okay? Hopefully that makes sense. Now again, I'm not even gonna snap them on because it's a waste of time. I'm gonna take my ordnance back off that I worked earlier to put on. I'll flip the wing right side up. Then I'm gonna take these little backer plates. These backer plates go down into the wing like this. That is very disappointing looking. Big mistake, folks. Should have been painted, should have been on there.
Yeah.
That was such a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful look. And then you broke it up with that stupid plastic thing. Disappointed.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
If they had decals, that would have been nice because I would have covered it up with the decal, would have resolved that conflict.
Even if it was this like brownish color on the green would be less obnoxious.
I agree totally. Totally. It would have been huge.
I still think it's weird that they
That
didn't install them themselves.
That's very weird.
Yeah.
Now, before I do this, I just want to show you something. See on this one, there's a little bit of a bump, but it's very small. Right there. That one had a bigger rough edge on it. And this one's pretty smooth too, and pretty smooth. But I'm going to take the bottom of my countertop and just rub it on the bottom of the stone and just kind of buff that down a little bit. And that's going to take that sharp edge off. Okay. Okay, and then a very small Phillips tip screwdriver will help facilitate getting these in. Otherwise, you're going to have a really hard time doing this because they sent an Allen wrench that doesn't appear to work with anything on the plane. Unless it's like maybe part of, it might be to release the bell housing on the motor or something, but I don't really understand.
That's super weird.
Or maybe there's an adjustment inside we haven't got to yet. Okay, so we're just going to tighten this on here. So far, only mistake on this plane I've seen is not having these installed, which I don't know if I'm going to call that a mistake as much as a strategic decision. And then also the other part would be the look of it. Now they did send us extra screws, one for each bag. See? There's 2 extras, so we'll just lay those over here next to our Allen wrench that we can use as a Christmas gift for somebody, some unfortunate soul.
I can't wait for White Elephant Christmas.
Yeah, they're gonna be like, what the heck is this? It's a super valuable tool.
Maybe we could bag up all those extra screws we have.
They're bagged up. They're actually bagged in the bags separately.
Can I give them away?
No, you may not. I need you to organize them with labels.
Yes. No.
Okay. Just love it when the magnetic tip actually works. All right, so folks, what else do we do here on Brian Phillips RC? We also do radio-controlled airplanes. As you know, we do helicopters, we do quads, we do on-road vehicles that you ride on surface vehicles. We do radio-controlled surface vehicles. We'd like to do a little bit more in the waterways, but we don't have a waterway yet on our property that's worthy of filming, but we're working on that. Currently, we're burying our power lines, which is a pretty expensive capital project. When that's done, we can start looking into the pond thing. Okay, so if you're curious what else we do here on Brian Phillips RC, just look through the playlist. You can see
We do a lot of leaf blowers.
a lot of leaf blowers. It's one of our customers' favorite. Okay, so as you can see, we've got the wing mostly fully assembled, except the linkages aren't attached. That's okay, because once we hook it up to the reflex and or receiver, then we'll be able to center the surfaces. Now you could also take and center the surfaces by plugging in an XBC battery checker, which is also a servo tester or your favorite servo tester, to center the servos and do it that way. But I just as soon go ahead and set it up through the radio and do it all in one fell swoop. And also I just want to talk about cable management right now for a moment. As you can see, we've got quite a bit of extra cable here, and we've got these 4 that come out: gear, ailerons, and flaps, okay? The LEDs steal power from that circuit. So you can see the breakout board there, and you can see the wires separated, okay? So that's the way the breakout board works. It's very simplistic, but what I want to do is I want to make sure that breakout board is down and tucked in, and that the wires are not going to be unwieldy once we try to pass this into the fuse. Now, why do we care about that? Because as soon as you pass this through the fuse, it's going to be incredibly difficult to get this straightened out. Now, I'm not going to suggest anybody takes this plane apart twice, but some of you guys have really small cars, and so you may have to take this plane apart. If you've got this plane, I'd be surprised if you have to take it apart, because it is a pretty small plane, okay? We do have to do the tail. Why don't we do the tail before we mount the wing? Because I feel like the tail is going to be, we have the tail feather control.
Oh, to put the control horn.
Yeah, the rudder control horn. We have to do the same thing we just did. So I'm going to flip this on its side and get this. See how that's not straight? I am going to grab the needle nose pliers for that. Now, the needle nose pliers are really handy to get in there and just hang on to the shaft. Just grab the shaft and bite down hard, and then you can turn this. Now, if you turn that without holding the shaft, then what's going to happen is it's going to unspin down here inside, or potentially unspin down here inside. And that can leave you very upset, because you will have a control circuit that is not working. This is going to eventually go onto that. And this, of course, is going to go through the wing. We don't have to have that attached just quite yet. Always dry fit. Make sure you're going to reach what you need to reach. And then it's exactly the same setup as we did before. And yes, 1 extra screw came with this set. So every nut sack and bolt sack
Had an extra screw?
had an extra screw.
Somebody will be able to build
We actually didn't even get 1 nut in the nut and bolt sacks.
I know, we aren't getting very many nuts anymore. It's kind of disappointing.
Well, don't worry. There's one coming that's going to have all sorts of nuts.
Oh, great.
I can tell you're excited. All right, folks, so we got this thing flipped over on its side, and we're going to be able to drop this little thing down there. Don't forget to get that angle so that you can see the angle, so it receives this countersunk hole. Sounds like our fridge had to squirt a little there. I don't know if you guys could hear that in the video. It was very obnoxious. Probably the ice maker. Or the gremlins in there. Okay, and this will be the last screw of the assembly. Short of the one that we didn't know what Allen drive was for. Could be an adjustment somewhere, we just don't know about it yet. Kind of doubt it though. Okay. So that takes care of that. Now, to set the wing on here, I'm trying to get this piece of foam off. Good, it didn't take the paint off. There is actually an adjustment point there. Look at this. See that? What do you think that hole's for?
I don't know. I was wondering about that earlier.
I don't see anything.
The mystery hole.
There's another mystery hole here. Look. You know what I bet it is?
What?
I bet it's a jig hole.
It goes all the way through.
I know. Both of them do.
Weird.
That one goes all the way through too. It's a jig hole. I bet what they do is they mount the fuse on there when they're painting it. Because then they can mount a bunch of them onto a stand and they can go through and spray, and then they can move their jig cover over and do it again.
Why don't they all have that in?
I don't know. So looking inside here, you can see there's wires that need to pass through, and then there's 4 nut zerts, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Okay, this drops down in there. And the P-40 is a pretty easy build. Although I want to check that my wires fell down. Ooh, my wires actually should have gone through the front hole, it looks like. Actually, I'm going to try that. Hopefully that's not, I'm not going to regret it. Kind of a lot of wire in that wing, and it's kind of fighting me now, I think, a little bit. I do notice a little bit of crushing on the edges of this model, even before I built it. But this is a pretty soft foam, and you're gonna have that trade-off. The softer the foam, the more resilient it is to damage, but it's also sometimes, you know, arguably uglier. And I don't think this is particularly ugly foam, but there's definitely some crushing over here, and this is plastic and plastic, but then you can see kind of the crushing here and the crushing here. That's disappointing. But there again, there's many model companies that would put that out, and that would be their best work. That's the worst part of this plane. No problems with alignment there, just went right in. I'm just working through the rinks. And I usually look for this little crushing effect here to know that the wing is tight enough to be on there all the way permanently. Now, some of you guys might use a drill or an impact to drive these in. If you do, especially if you're going in and out of a car, you know, trying to make room, I understand the draw to using a very fast-acting drill, but just keep in mind that you can strip these things out and rip the whole nut zert out if you're not careful. So don't go too crazy. You do want a little bit of purchase, but you don't want it to be ripping the nut zert out and then invalidating the whole connection point. Okay, so all 4 of those are tight. I'm happy with that. And then I want to talk about the extra glue that's coming off of the guns, the simulated guns. And what I usually do to deal with that is I'll take a Q-tip, and there's a little bit coming out on this gun, and I just noticed that because I'll squeeze this periodically. And all I do is I just get the edge of it and just pull it up. And it's gone. And since that foam to foam is very clear, you'll probably never see it. But sometimes you might notice it, you know, 2 weeks later when you walk by and it's kind of parked waiting for you. Then you can pick them off with a pair of needle nose pliers. Okay, so guys, that plane is built. I mean, it is assembled. And with the drop tank, oh man, that thing barely clears. That looks pretty stinking sweet, I think. That is really gorgeous.
It's a great size.
I know, I love that size class. That's really cool. 1100 millimeters is bigger than this by 10%, folks. This is a very small, it's like a big ultra micro, which is pretty cool. It's about twice the size of an ultra micro. Now, smaller planes tend to be harder to fly, and I'm hoping this one's a good to fly plane. But our experience has been that when they're small like this, they tend to be a little bit harder to fly. So we'll see. Oh, good Lord. What in the heck are they thinking about with that connector?
Goodness gracious.
Why?
It's not there.
Why do we have an EC5 in here? That was such a dumb choice. So if it's an EC5, that means that every single battery I have is the wrong size.
Right.
100% of them.
We have one random for us with a...
Yeah, a 5,000 milliamp hour.
Which is not what you're going to use.
No, but it's funny because that's the one I use in the P47, or excuse me, in the P40 that's in the 1.4 meter size class. Now 1.4 meter is about double the size of that plane. I mean, the wing is about as big as this whole body. So, I mean, not quite because 1.4, yeah, it's a lot bigger. This is 980 millimeters. So big miss there, big miss on these. But other than that, still pretty happy with the plane. I'm disappointed in that though, because how is anybody gonna plug into that?
Right.
You're gonna have to redo the connector just to make it work. So let's talk about this. If we have an adapter, we can use an adapter, but I doubt we have an adapter, so we may not be able to do what we want to do. Sometimes when you have a million adapters, it can be very frustrating because the one adapter you need doesn't exist, because usually you need to adapt from like the battery to the plane and not from the plane to the battery, right? So you don't generally adapt from a large adapter down to a smaller inlet, but you might use a large battery to fire a small plane, okay? So the batteries that we were thinking about using, let's just go to this one here. 2200 4S Gen 2 Smart Pack. This one's seen better days. It's actually probably about time to get replaced. And as you can see, this battery has an IC3. Now IC3 can actually be plugged into this adapter that I built, and that takes us up to IC5, okay? The IC5 will then go into an EC5. So yes, I did build this adapter. No, it's not hard. It's just kind of a weird size to have to mesh up with the plane like this. So if this is your plane and it's the only one that has this weird connector on it, what I would suggest you do is very carefully lop off the end of this, save as much length as you see fit, and then go ahead and put your proper EC5 or XT60. I prefer XT60 in this regard because then you can use an XT60 equipped battery or an EC or an IC all on an XT60. And I'll explain that if you don't know what I'm talking about. This is an XT60 equipped 3300, and it has obviously a different type of connector. Just for easy consideration, I'll get you an adapter here. So here's an adapter that would come off of an airplane generally. You can plug this in to use it, or we'll just put that one right back, or you could take another 4S 2200, that happens to be a 100C pack, and you can plug this in. It's not ideal and it will go. You won't have to worry about breaking your smart pin, but the tight fit is maybe not going to be good for people with arthritis or people with bad patience. So the choice is yours, folks. Or you can get adapters that are like this. I think we got these ones with a special variety of battery, and they were Venom packs. And these Venom packs come with an XT60 by default. And then of course they come with a number of adapters that go from XT60 to EC3 or IC3. IC3 simply includes the data line, and they've got a lot better connector style, but they are exactly the same otherwise. EC stands for E-Flight Connector, in case you guys didn't know that. And they're one of my least favorite connectors in the whole wide world. IC are some of the best connectors, and they are the same dimensions. They work really good, and they're very easy to plug in and out as compared to the EC3. Especially in the EC5 setting, we had lots of times where we've had trouble plugging them in, and it's just one of those things that you learn to really hate with passion. Okay, so I'm gonna grab scissors because we're gonna need to do the slide trick. I'm just gonna bring this battery over just to show you the difference between a battery that's been used and abused in helicopters and by Brian Phillips RC, flying planes for well over the desirable flight times. And then this is one that's just a little bit older. This is a 100C pack. It's got a little teeny bit of puff to it because we've flown some pretty demanding planes with it. This one we've flown demanding planes and not demanding, but they're both 4S and it's quite a bit thicker. And then here's a 50C. Excuse me, this is the 100C. That was a 50C. My apologies, folks. This is a 50C. This is 100C. So you can see what tends to happen is that the larger C packs will tend to hold their shape longer, but also because arguably we use them less because it's not a good example for you guys watching, because most people are not going to use a 100C pack on a plane that calls for 25C. Now you can always use a 100C pack on a 25C plane. You can use a 100C pack on a 35C requirement or a 50C requirement, but you don't want to use a 30C pack on a 100C requirement plane because you're going to kill your battery. You won't have enough power to supply what's needed. So you can go and you can provide more power than is needed, but you cannot provide less power than needed. The provision, the load. Okay, so if you guys don't know a lot about electricity, that's how you can think of it. This is the demand, and then the battery is the provision. So just make sure that your provision is enough for the demand or the load. All right, so next thing's coming out of the pike here. We got to get this. There is no Velcro in here. Okay, fair enough. So because there's no Velcro, shelf liner is a little bit more complicated if you so choose to do it. So the camera crew is on the wrong side, so she's gonna come around so she can see what's going on. She's gonna stand to my left side. Okay, so you can see, ordinarily, there would be Velcro in these planes, and the Velcro helps us to hold the battery in position, but we always go with a shelf liner because as you can see, it just makes it extremely hard to slide. Okay, now it can slide and it has to have some retention to hold it down so that it can be contacting both of those surfaces. But as you can see in this plane, there's just a lot going on, and that is not a desirable thing. Now I also see that we would probably really rather have these connection points going under here, correct? I agree, good point. So time for forceps, and we're gonna move those wires, and then we'll come back to the shelf liner. Now this is probably one of those times where you're thinking to yourself, Brian, stay on topic. I'm so confused. You were talking about shelf liners, then this, then that. Well, this is what happens when you build a plane. You realize there's something in your way, so then you respond to it until you're done, and then the plane flies.
Pretty much.
And that is an oversimplification, I realize, but it is true. Okay, so you see these wires. Obviously, you don't want all this crap going through the Velcro. These are the mid-grade strips. I said light duty, I think. Or did I say mid? I said mid-grade? Mm-hmm. Okay, good. So one thing I like about the mid-grade is that they're thick enough to be pulled through like this. That's very important and crucial. I can also warn you that you have to be very careful. You're gonna have to give me a little more room for my back there. One thing that's tough is that this is gonna start taking the paint off if you're not careful, okay? So this ESC lead, I want to be on the outside. So I'm just gonna work it under. Then when we strap in our battery, it holds the battery and not the wire, okay? Not that there's some big inherent problem with holding the wire, it's just not what we want. Okay, you see how I held these together? That's gonna help. Then I can pull this out, and I can pull this out. This is called cable management as we work our way through this process. We need to get all these wires plugged into the receiver, and actually they need to get plugged in here, but what the heck, how is that gonna work? See this? We have extension cords that go to all these cables here, right? So that goes into your receiver, but then how in the heck are we gonna reach this crap back here? I don't think that they thought that through very well. We may not actually have enough room. Let's try. So I'm using, these are called hemostats or forceps. They're very helpful. You don't need them. It just makes it a lot easier. That's the gear. Okay, gear goes straight into the receiver, so we don't need to worry about that. See, now I can reach under that wood. Pull this through. This is rudder, I think. Nope, that's flap. Flap also can go straight to the receiver. It doesn't need to go through the reflex because it's not a stabilizer circuit. And then this is the ailerons. Okay, so I'm just gonna reach the forceps so I can see the tip of my forceps. Goodness gracious, this is annoying. Okay, grab the ailerons, and I'm gonna just take them and very gently pull and see if I can get any extra slack. See how I've got them clipped on there? So I can let go, it holds on. I'm gonna try pulling gently. That's probably all I'm gonna get. No, there's gotta be more in there. I'm gonna just go in here and I'm gonna pull. You see how I've got my middle finger in there? And this is supported, and then I'm supporting here. So I'm actually not pulling on the connection points here. You don't wanna rip the wire out. I'm pulling here and relieving the pressure. And I don't know, that's not looking real hot for reaching to that connection point. See that? Mm-hmm. So I have to try to untangle something here. See if I can get a little bit more. I think it's just underneath the foam and being pinched by the screws that we tightened to hold the wing on. So I'm gonna do the same thing again. I don't want to rip it out, but I do want to make it to the controller board. Okay, so it looks like I'm there now, but just, I mean, I'm talking barely there. Okay, so now how do we know which direction the signal, the orange, the power, the red, and the ground, the brown, which is the same in this orientation? White would be signal, orange would be signal, red would be red for power, and red would be red for power, DC plus. Black would be ground or DC minus, and black would be brown for DC minus. You see how I got them laid out there? In case yours is different than mine. Sometimes you'll get that in models. Don't worry, it's just the difference between a brand, Futaba JR versus, Futaba versus Hextronics JR. Okay. And it's funny because some of the stuff I've picked up on over the years happened during my gap in involvement in radio-controlled airplanes. And you're like, gap in involvement? What do you mean gap? Well, there was a time in my life when I was younger and I had some connection to it, but I wasn't really involved with it myself. I'm having a really hard time making that angle. So I'm gonna reattach this and I'm gonna try again because I do not want to break the pins off. This is the tightest it's ever been in an FMS plane in my whole career of doing this. You see, now it's in and it's tight, and that's pretty much it. I don't think we can get any more out of that breakout board. Okay? So now those two are gonna have to go into the receiver. This wire here is coming from the ESC, so we can rearrange that a little bit. The elevator does not need to go up anywhere. It can actually tuck back behind all this crap. So I'm just using my middle and index fingers to push this back. Now the forceps. As you can see, we can just get that the heck out of the way. Throttle is going to get unplugged briefly while we untangle the rudder. The rudder is brown toward the front and it's in the closest circuit plug. I'm going to plug this back in. See, this is cable management 101. Untangle as you go. Next thing you know, you have a plane that's well organized, or machine, or whatever it is you're doing cable management on. I do cable management all the time. Those forceps are invaluable within the arena of cable management. If you've never used them, you should get yourself a pair. They're quite inexpensive. You can get a pair like this for probably less than $10 in most applications, or you can get a set of straight and bent for probably less than 20 bucks or even cheaper. I would prefer to have ones that have a short bite point and this further forward. You can reach further into a tight spot, open, and then do your thing and close. These ones are too far out, creates leverage, and they bend. Okay, they bend. Then you don't get a tight closure. All right, so getting back to the point, you can see why I'm concerned about that. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully you guys get it and I don't have to preach to the choir anymore. And then throttle, of course, is gonna have to get relanded. So I'd really, really like to get this out of the way. I don't know if I can go one side versus the other. I don't know that one's better than the other. So I'm gonna actually go between these two because that's the way it comes out of the ESC. That is a humongo ESC, humongo. Also, I think I'm gonna tape this wire so it's out of the way as we work to load the battery each time. And then I'm gonna take this back and then I'm gonna go in like this, and then the black goes forward. Okay, and it goes into this port. Now you're like, why the heck does throttle go into the reflex? Now the reason that they put throttle in the reflex on FMS planes, I believe, is because they can then make a safety feature, and they can also guarantee that they're able to pull power from that circuit. Now, you might say, well, you can still get BAC voltage from any of the other plugs. True, except that not all, well, because you're gonna have ailerons, elevator, and rudder that all come into this. And then from that, you're gonna have ailerons, elevator, and rudder that go out of it. But you're also gonna have mode. So there's really 4 different circumstances where you can pull positive and negative from any of those. So we also have throttle. Well, if you have throttle, you can control throttle control, meaning that you can prevent somebody from cutting themselves fairly easy if you have control of that. Except, I don't know. I'm just gonna tape this and just leave that for your deep thought. Okay, so you can see I just used a long piece of tape. Camera crew is desperately trying to get a good angle. You want to try from the other side and see if it works this time? Or is it too hard for you to reach?
I should probably be sitting on the counter, but we'll try from over here for a minute.
If you guys are old farts like us, your back gets sore standing and doing these things. Because it's funny, with airplanes, you don't think about it when you're watching somebody do this, but you're always just far enough out that you're leaned over just a little bit. And if you're a young guy, and you're like, man, you are an old fart. You're right, I am. But the thing is, when you get older and everything starts getting sore, then you'll understand. Yeah, bending over for a long period of time is not good for your back. Okay, so that's why I'm always trying to pull this like really close to my body, and then the camera crew's like, no, I need room to stand and put the camera and all these things. Well, yeah, but I don't want to die doing this. Okay, so we've got all these wires here. Cable management's getting pretty good because now I just got to pass these back under the throttle line because I feel pretty happy with the way this has turned out so far. So I'm just going to jog these under. The reflex wiring usually turns out pretty nice, but this is a bigger receiver than just an AR620. Now, if you'd like to use the AR620, by the way, you could totally throw an AR620 in this. And remember the trick. The trick of the day is this. Use the highest channel or just whatever channel you set to a 3-position switch. You could even put it on the rudder or the elevator. It doesn't matter. Just plug it in one time, pull it, see what happens to your flash sequence on the reflex to get to stabilized only, and then depower it by unplugging that port, and you're done. And you don't have to mess with it again. Now, you won't be able to switch between auto leveling and auto leveling and off and stabilization, or stabilization versus auto leveling and stabilization. I usually set it up on my transmitter because of the nature of the switches, and we might as well grab this receiver now while we're over here. Because of the nature of the switches, I always do, by default, landing gear, flaps, some sort of a weird mode if I need it, safe on or off. So safe off, no stabilizer, stabilizer on, and safe on, or auto leveling on. Okay, so this would be my normal stabilizer on, normal flight mode. I don't use this switch for anything ever. This is for my dual rates and expo. This is for thrust reverse if I use it. Thrust reverse controlled, pilot fatigue, forward flight mode, throttle cut, cut, uncut so I can fly, and then master gain, with that being in the middle at the end of the first couple of flights when we've defined all of the gains, okay? Then elevator, ailerons, rudder, throttle. So I always know what I'm doing. Now, the catch is, if I don't have retracts, then I will use this for safe on, AS3X only, or in this case, it'd be stabilization on, normal flight mode, auto leveling as well. Now, why do I do that? Because I have a lot of planes that have flaps, but no retracts. And so that gives me the ability to get over here. And since I'm a thumb flyer and not a pincer grip flyer, I have a hard time getting to the D switch. It takes me longer to get there. And if you're a new pilot, you need to start figuring out what makes sense to you. However, when you figure out what makes sense to you, start figuring out if you can get support to do what you like. And so one of the reasons you might copy me is because you don't really have a preference yet. When I started this, I didn't have a preference. I didn't care. I could give two craps which did what. But I knew in my head that I would eventually have to define some standards so that I could continue to do that. Now, a lot of times, the only deviation I do from Spectrum is that they will oftentimes suggest that flaps are on switch D. I don't use switch D. I have a hard time getting to switch D. I use flaps all throughout my flight. I'm constantly changing them. I need to be able to do it without looking at the switches. If I go to D, I oftentimes hit switch C. So that's why I like using switch B. Okay, this is flaps and retract equipped. So that means that for us, our mode switch is going to be controlled by D. I knew I had a point here, and that was the point. So the reason I went through all that elaborate explanation is because at the end of the day, we have to start plugging these wires in, and we're at the end of the day. So we're going to start plugging these wires in. Okay, so we have a receiver here. Okay, This is an AR8020T. The T stands for telemetry. There is no AS3X on this. This one's just going to be a full ranged receiver without telemetry. Now, you know what I'm just realizing we did? Oh, we did okay. But we're gonna have to chase all the way from here, wherever the receiver is, back to this, okay? And then down. And why are we gonna have to do that? For the voltage telemetry. Okay, so this is one of the only times, whoops, where you have to do this is when you have technology from one brand paired up with a technology from another brand. Now, if we were using a smart receiver and a smart ESC, we wouldn't actually need to use this telemetry line. It would actually pass through the serial data that's passing through the cable with the ESC. That's why we have a bunch of weird colored cables on avian ESCs. So in this case, if you ever wanted to switch out this receiver from the factory, which I wouldn't recommend because it's a very nice ESC, but it does have a weird connector on it, then this would be where you would do it. And then you could go to an AR 8020T and just not use this, but that gives you the full feature. Problem is you can't get a basic 7-channel receiver. I don't know why it's not offered, but it's not. There is a book, it talks about setup. There's not much setup on this one, so we'll just lay that aside. The main setup features we're gonna hit on the head on this video. Okay, so we'll untwist this. Okay, so this is kind of the weird transitory state where we go from build to radio setup, okay? Because this is like the pseudo radio setup beginning, okay? We've already talked about it real briefly at the beginning of the build, just to give you an idea of what to expect. Okay, now this wire can be twisted, and usually you want to be careful about putting too much torque on these, but I'll twist a little bit and then I'll grab the cable. And you see what I'm doing as I walk this, you see how it's pulling the cable through. It's not like you have to do a super tight twist. I usually do a pretty tight twist though. And the reason I do that tight twist, as you'll understand in a moment, this is going to be chasing through the plane in an opportune way. And we'll teach you how to resolve that conflict by simply twisting these, okay? And this is all coming back to cable management and the nature of the beast. Now, I've seen inside of a lot of other people's planes, and I have never been overly impressed with the way the wires look. And I don't know, call it anal retentiveness, which yes, check. Call it just difference in personality or whatever it is. When I get into my planes, there's a few that are pretty messy, but most of them are pretty tidy. And I think that the tidier the plane is, the easier it is to fix. And yes, I do fix a lot of planes because I crash them. Okay, so pull these out, be gentle that you don't damage this, especially this exposed part. If you ever do damage this, make sure you measure exactly how much the other one is and mimic it. If you have to cut it, I wouldn't recommend it. I'd replace them. You can unscrew the case, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can actually replace these if you break them. We've never had to do that, thank goodness. This is the bind button, and then this thing is actually gonna plug in here. It says volt. Now, which way does it go in? I don't know, good question. It goes one way or the other, and if it doesn't fit, you did it the wrong way. Okay, so that's the correct way, good. Now, the one thing I don't like about those top plugs is the fact that there's not really a good way to route the cable. You just kind of have to route it down, and then it sort of blocks your cover that shows where you plug in all the pins, okay? But not a big deal. It just kind of is what it is. Now, if they came off the side, it would make it, you'd have a lot less mounting positions. Now, since this isn't spatially aware, in the sense that we need that for stabilization or AS3X or auto leveling or any of that, we don't really care where this mounts. It can mount anywhere. So in this plane, it's gonna be quite easy. And you can see I'm still, even though I didn't say you had to put a million twists on this, I'm still just, my anal retentiveness will not let go. I need to try to tighten this a little bit more. If you want to get that really tight, you take and hold about an inch back and an inch back with the chuck on your drill and you run it until it tightens. And you can get it really tight, really neatly and quick. All right, so this thing can actually probably fit into that cavity, but I don't know if we'll have enough plugs. Okay, so we're at this weird ambiguous place where I have to start making a decision on what do we do next. I think I'm gonna start radio setup next because the radio setup is gonna dictate what channel plugs into what port on this transmitter through this, on this receiver through this transmitter, okay? So we're gonna start radio setup now by turning on the transmitter. This of course is an NX8. I set up my Concendo the other night, that was fun. Click the back and the cancel, Add new model. I've had that forever, by the way. And we set it up on the NX6, and that's why it wasn't in this one. Okay, so create. So we're gonna make an acro, that's the type. There's also heli, sailplane, and quads. Takes a while. The more you get in there, the longer it takes, by the way, I've noticed. Goodness gracious, it took a long time that time. Okay, so then model select would take you right back to where we came from. Model type, that's where you would set whichever one you want. And then the model name, this is where you type in the name. So in this case, this is gonna be the P-40 by FMS, and it's in the 980 millimeter size class. So we'll type that in. I am using, admittedly, a legacy keyboard. I like it better than the new one. So if you see some deviation there, you can do that in system setup, but I do have the latest and greatest firmware. All right, so we got P-40B, FMS, 980 millimeters. Okay, so we can hit back. Aircraft type, this is where you set the wing type, which you want to have one flap and one aileron, and then a normal tail. Next, and they do have a picture in here of the P-40. Oh, there it is. Where is it? Spitfire, and there's BF-109. Oh no, do they not have one? Did I miss it? There's P-51, P-47, F4U, T-28, Spitfire, BF-109, and then what? Ooh, there's an A-10 in there. Where's there an A-10? Well, that's weird. Oh, there's an A-10. Well, I guess in that case, we'll have to pick the closest one, which should be like the Spitfire, probably my opinion. Flight mode setup, I don't think we're going to have any flight modes on this one. We usually reserve those mostly for the AS3X and safe. Okay, first thing we're going to set up is throttle cut. Throttle cut is not going to be inhibiting. I'm going to set to switch H. So as you can see, when my stick moves up and down, there's no movement until throttle cut is off. And then it's allowed to work. Turn that back on, test it. Okay, good. Throttle curve isn't used on airplanes so much. Analog switch setup, just not doing any of that. Flap system, we will turn that on. I'm going to set to switch B. I don't know which way is going to be up, which way is going to be down, so we'll just do a quick test. One's 66, one's minus 66. Something like that, minus 35, doesn't really matter. And then the correction factor is going to be like 5 and, let's do 5 and 8. Okay, now we don't know what they're going to actually be, but we just need to make sure that we're prepared. Actually, we're going to have to play with that first when we do it, because we can't hook up our linkages until we know it's right.
Oh.
And then speed, we'll do 2 seconds. For deployment speed, makes a big difference. By the way, the elevator correction compared to the flap correction will also happen at the same speed adjustment. Now, if you're curious what that's going to look like, then you can just look at these down here in the monitor. See the flap movement? And you'll see aux2 is moving. That's because that's tied, so I'm going to go back here. I'm going to scroll all the way down to system setup, disconnect RF, yes. Go down to channel assign. I don't want that attached to any switch. So now if I go to monitor, watch this. See, now aux2 doesn't change. Just that little elevator correction and the flap movement. Flap, okay. So we got gear up and down, all that good stuff. So normally I want that like this, with the gear down, gear up for flight, gear down, ready to land, okay? Always do that the same or you get super confused. Clear the timer. So let's do a timer next. We will have telemetry for voltage. I'd say let's set it for 5 minutes with an active 1 out timer. That means it's gonna start the time as soon as we start taking off. Okay, at 1 minute, I want voice. 20 seconds, nothing. 10 seconds, I want voice again. It's gonna count down. Expiration, tone and vibrate, and then a tone every minute thereafter. Walk out of that. Telemetry we'll deal with later. Bind will be ready, and we can bind when we've got power going to it. And but we're not quite ready, so we'll just go over to monitor mode so we can see what channel plugs into what relative to our receiver. And yes, we've got this line to take care of too, but we'll get to that here just shortly because we kind of have to tuck things where they're going to go before we can get all that done. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring this close enough for me to reach. And I've got the transmitter. Of course, you want to be gentle with these lines. Don't break them. They're a coax cable. There's 2 different conductors. There's a conductor on the inside, and then there's a sheath on the outside that's also conductive. And it's a comparator between one to the other, so don't break these, don't kink them. And as with any other coax cable, And look at that, I'm twisting it again. All right, so the flaps are gonna plug into channel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's gonna be the hardest one to reach. And brown is gonna go down. So I've got brown away from me. Channel 6, brown is down. How do I know brown is down? Because I can see right here it says S plus minus on the edge here. S plus minus referring to pin top is S, pin middle is plus, pin minus is the downside, okay? Then I'm gonna take gear. Gear is going to go into the gear channel, which is channel 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just verified on the screen. I usually pull these labels back just a little bit so I can verify my colors. Then channel 5 is gonna slip in right next to flaps, that's good. Don't worry, it's not energized. I happen to be pressing that just by accident. Okay, then all these wires have to land. And as you can see, we're gonna be real tight on these wires. So that's okay. Tight is okay in certain circumstances, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so then we've got throttle over here, and you're like, why would throttle come out of the stabilizer? Yes, exactly. We talked about that earlier. It's a safety feature, I believe. Okay, so safety first. Also, throttle plug first. Now, not to be confused with the programming cable, which goes here. You're gonna need to switch sides, please. There you go. See, there's channel 1. You've got the throttle plugged in now. And as I'm going, I'm just kind of doing my cable management, pulling these things back while I can. So ailerons is the second one, so we'll just pass this under. Once we're under, we'll go ahead and poke that into channel 2, or port 2, which is happen to be channel 2 as well. Okay, then this one is elevator. Elevator is actually the next one, yay. So just a little bit at a time. If you're careful the way you do this, should be no problem at all. Doing these installs with the Reflex 2 is quite simple, provided you have the basics down. Now, that's part of the reason why you're here watching, is you may not have the basics down. And if you don't have the basics down, thanks for being here with us. I'm Brian Phillips, RC. If you want to help support us, buy the planes from the links in the video description below. We get paid small commissions from these companies we work with when you buy them. And if you don't buy them, we don't get paid. So, not trying to talk you into something you don't want. If you love this plane, buy it, and buy it from the link. If you hate this plane, buy another plane from another link. We don't care which one you buy. We just want you to buy stuff from the links when you do buy. Cool. Commercial for Brian Phillips, RC there. All right, we have channel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 plugged in. 7 and 8 are not plugged in because we have one more here. That's called mode, and it says mode, SBU PPM mode. Okay, so SBU PPM mode. Okay, so we're gonna flip this and plug that into channel 7 in this case. Not that it couldn't go into 8, but you know, we're just gonna go with what kind of makes it neat. Then we've got this bundle of wires, and my objective is to now figure out a place to put that. That's gonna be out of the way of the battery, which is gonna be right here. So ideally, I would like to get it into that hole there if I can get it in there without causing problems with something else. So I'm actually gonna take this. I think I'm gonna chase this wire. This wire is very long, okay? So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna chase this, and it's gonna ride back here, and then it's gonna follow, if I can. See, I'm not gonna get it there. I have to go the other way. So it's gonna chase down like this. I'm gonna give this a twist or two, like this, right? Okay, so like 3 or 4 twists, 4 twists, okay. Now I'm not messing with the antennas because those ones we want to keep protected. Not to be confused with antennae. We had somebody correct us on that once. They said antennae are reserved for animals. Antennas are what you have on an aircraft with more than one of them. Did I say that correctly?
I believe so.
Okay, good. I don't know if that's going to go in there or not. I'm trying, but I don't want to damage anything. Okay, I'm going to untwist once and see if I can get it now. Note that I'm not pinching the cables. I am bending them, but I'm not pinching them. That's the key. Ooh, that's not feeling real good, like it's gonna go in there. What do you think, camera crew?
You're also gonna have to get that bind plug at some point.
The bind switch, yeah. I agree. That's what I was thinking about too. Okay, so what if we did this? I have a sneaky suspicion that it would be totally fine back here. Don't you also agree?
I would think so.
Okay, so we got a couple of wires here. Looks like that's all. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to keep these free. And at the end of the day, those would be best to be perpendicular of each other. That's pretty good. I don't hate that. Although I can get another twist out of these wires. Why do I want another twist out of these wires? Because then it'll look nicer and it'll stay out of the way more effectively. Now when I push this down, when I push this down, I don't want to cut these wires off, or at least I don't want to put them in a position where they could be damaged. So I'm going to push down the tip first. See how I did that? Then these wires can be out of the way of the plastic, which could be construed as a pinch point, and then I can push it down like I did without damaging it. The reflex is spatially aware and it does matter, but look at that nice little pinch point we've got there now. Holds it right in place without any adhesive, and I can still get in there and hit the bind plug. Sweet. Okay, I can definitely live with that, but I do not like the fact that we are gonna have our battery right up on top of all this craziness. So that means that we have to now figure out what we're gonna do to get this wire delivered up front to where the ESC is. And as you can see, look at the length. That's about what we need to get back to the top of this connection. So you can ride along one wire or you can ride along both, but I kind of like to ride along one because it keeps things nice and tailored looking. Now you can braid this all the way up and down if you want, but I'm not going to go through that level of trouble for this. And then we're going to tape that other one in. So if you want to trim these spots there. So I'm going to just grab a little bit of tape, about 2 inches of tape, just clear tape, nothing special. And I'm just going to take and hold this right about like that and just tape it. Okay? Nothing real special about it. You could also take your X-Acto knife and cut a slot and pass it into the slot, and we've done that for years and it's worked really good, but it's also kind of a pain and it's not rocket science. You guys could figure it out on your own if you want to try that. Okay, so I don't know if I give myself enough room, but as you can see, I don't want that to prevent where our battery can go. And boy, there must be some mold release going on with that. Holy cow, did you see how easy that came off?
Oh, wow.
That was like not even attached. Okay, let's think about that for a minute. Let's try this. Alternative plan number 101. We're gonna go down to the bottom where it doesn't interfere with the battery placement. And since it doesn't want to stay with tape, you could hot glue tack that and hold it in place that way, or you can pin it with some other material. I'm gonna show you guys one other method that works really good. We show all sorts of different methods here on Brian Phillips RC. Usually they're driven by what's in the kitchen and easy. And so I'm gonna get some actual kitchen things, which would be a toothpick, okay? I've actually got 4 of them. I don't know how many I'm gonna need, but I'm just gonna try this first, see how it works. So I'm gonna take and force this whole bundle over. I'm gonna get that right behind where it belongs, okay? And I'm just gonna push this in. Now, we have the forceps handy, so I'm gonna go ahead and grab the forceps. And I'm just gonna stab that into the foam. Now that's going into the wing, so don't worry, not gonna hurt anything. See? That's gonna keep it right where it needs to be. Notwithstanding a crash, of course, crashes are gonna break stuff. Now this, I'd really like to stick in from outside because that would guarantee a good point, but I think I'm gonna go in here instead if I can get it to go. Okay, so you see I'm starting it way up here. So the best thing you can do is actually grab this, push it over further than you want, and then stick it in. Now watch what happens when you let go. That thing then relaxes into its position tight. See how it's tight? Tight up against the side. Now watch this. If you go a little further, now you can take and push that into the foam, or you can force it into the foam like this, and then pull it back a little bit. So now you've got it held up against the side, but it's also removable in a pinch. Now the same will be done right here. See what I did? Pretty simple stuff. And it's somewhat removable, okay? So we showed you a million different ways to do that. Now that's the 1,001st way. All right, so now what is this thing gonna do? Obviously in a perfect world, you would just solder it onto those connectors there. Okay, but we're in an imperfect world, as you may or may not know. If you're not aware of that, just wait till you're older. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna take and plug this into the wire. So I'm like, So I'm going to take, and since that didn't work, and we've got, you know, these things here, why don't we use these things? Since if you can't do it with a kitchen utensil, it's obviously not acceptable. So I actually like that method so much, I'm gonna do this with the whole bank, before we move on, I'm gonna do this with the whole bank of wiring, right like this, okay? I'm sorry I'm blocking your view, hon. You're gonna have to get real creative to shoot that. Okay, going down deeper, and then pulling it out just a hair, okay? So that'll keep everything kind of in place. Remember, that's not a spatially aware receiver, so it doesn't really matter where it is. Okay, now for this one, I don't even need to be inside the cavity. I can do it out here. See this? I'm gonna take this, and I can do this one of two ways. I can pierce anywhere along here, and then I can feed the wire in, or I can pull this back and do it up there. But as you can see, I broke the tip, and that's common. You gotta protect your tip. Okay, so I'm just gonna drill in. And you're like, but Brian, won't that short out the plane? No, it won't short out the plane unless this and this touch together. And they're not gonna be able to touch together very easily, okay? So now I'm just gonna push this in. You're like, but Brian, that seems really, 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 really crappy. It's actually pretty much just that. But you know what? It'll work perfectly fine and you'll never know any better. And no, you don't need to worry about the current load or any of that. There's hardly any load on this. It's just a test fixture. Okay, so now that I've forced that in, I'm gonna actually tape it down on that right there. So it's got no way of coming undone unless the tape is released. Okay, so now what type of tape would you recommend? Well, I mean, preferably it'd be whatever the tape is that's sitting next to you on the table. Or if you wanna go and do it the right way, you would get a soldering iron and solder it to the connector, okay? In my case, I'm gonna use about 1 inch of clear tape. Okay, so this is nothing fancy. I'm just gonna go in here, lay that down over the top of my joint. I'll fold this around, pulling the wire tight. I'm gonna make nice contact. Make sure you push it down as you go, or you're gonna hate life because you're not gonna know when your battery is dead. Actually, the telemetry would defer to a dead battery if it was disconnected, I believe. Okay, pretty simple stuff. Then we just repeat that here. We take the end that isn't broken as bad, and we just drill in to, so you're through the silicone layer, and then you've got wire in there that is braided and very supple and easy to move around, unless you do it down here where it's got solder soaked into it. So there's no way you could do this in that position. So I'm gonna press in at a 45 or 90 degree angle there. I'm gonna try to get it in as deep as possible, and that's obviously got good penetration. We're all about penetration here on Brian Phillips RC. You gotta get the penetration just right, okay? Now we're gonna do the same thing, about 1 inch or so of tape, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less, doesn't really matter, so long as you get it located and you get good contact so it keeps that from popping out easily, then you should be golden. And remember guys, all you're doing is you're just tapping the power so you can get voltage feedback. And that's why we braided this around the wire, so that it's just held in place and it's no big deal and you don't have to worry about it every time you get in and out of the plane. All right, so what else do we have to deal with inside of this plane? We've got 2 antennas that are floating around, okay? These things are supposed to be at 90 degrees of each other. So either like this or like this. That's pretty much the 2 ways. So I'm gonna just drop one of these back here until it falls out of view, and we can just call that at whatever angle it goes to. Looks like it's kind of lengthwise here. As you can see, it kind of just flopped like this. So then the other one will slide back here until it goes vertical. Okay. Pass it, pass it, pass it, pass it, pass it, pass it. How does the canopy attach? Remind me.
Goes in the nose tab.
Okay. How deep does the back go in? X-Acto knife time, I think, on this. Well, we've been using the. So this is my question for the camera crew: was how far back does this go? How deep does it penetrate? So here's what I'm going to do. Okay. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take from here and I'm going to pierce this foam. Okay. And I'm going to make a pocket. See how I just did that, guys? See how it came out? You may have to go to the other side. Can you see?
I can't see, but
Okay. Try from the other side, see if you can see better.
it's probably better.
Okay. So now we'll pull this back out. See how it's down there? See what I'm talking about now? So all I did was just use that. Now I'm gonna take this down. I'm just gonna real carefully pass it by all this stuff. Bent tip is what you use more if you get forceps, by the way. Just very gently pulling it down. Do not click this. You will rip it up inside. Okay, then I lift until that antenna slides into the foam. Come on now, you know you want it. Get in there. Why aren't you going in? Oh, it's really fighting me on this. I wonder if I've got one straggler inside of that hole of foam. Sometimes you'll get that. See what I'm talking about? Pass through, okay. Not sure why it's not going in. Let's try again. There it is. Now it's going in. Okay. Pretty simple stuff. Okay, see how the gray is coming up? Okay, perfect. Now that's not coming out and we don't want it to come out. Show them here. It's not coming out here and we don't want that because we just wanted to get one this way as opposed to one this way. You see the one down there? That one's going lengthwise with the plane. And the one that we just stuck in is going horizontally. Or excuse me, this one's going vertical, that one's going this way. So lengthwise and then vertical wise. There you go. Now they're at 90 degrees of each other. And that should be a good install of the radio. And then since I got you out, I'm gonna use you to cut there. Okay. And the only reason I cut you there was so that I could fold this little tab of tape down. Okay, so now we've got everything taped in position. The things that need to be held down are held down. The things that can be loose can be loose. And we're ready to power this thing up and bind it and then get our controls attached. So that's our next step as part of this radio setup. As you can see, it's not like it's a really hard process. It's just more a matter of a lot of steps. Some of the steps require some weird tools like Q-tips and others require weird tools like toothpicks, but that's why you come to Brian Phillips RC first, so you can know what kitchen utensils you're gonna need to build this airplane. And if you want to help support us, buy this thing from the link in the video description below. All right, great. So this thing is going to go back on at some point, so just keep that in mind as you operate, okay? Because this thing is going to need to go on there to fly. I really think we should make it work with this, but this one's just so puffed. This is a Gen 2, so it's like our latest and greatest technology. So let's put it in here.
Okay.
And I don't know if we're going to do shelf liner or not. Just because we might not need to. Okay. That is like humongous amounts of Velcro. Like way more than it needs. See what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. It's just nutty amounts of Velcro. Okay, we say this a lot. When it's hard to put a battery in a plane, you tend to fly it less. And this one's like really awkward because imagine doing this on the grass or like crouched down on the runway, trying to get this stupid Velcro lined up. So manufacturers, if you're listening, and I doubt you are, come up with a better way of putting these batteries in, please. Something that's cool. The little trays are nice and all, as long as they work. Okay, so that's good enough for what we're doing now, but as you can see, that's definitely not gonna be flight worthy yet. And then what I was talking about earlier is that these are needing to be free to move in and out, which they are. But as you can see, they have to be far enough out so that you can actually get these together. And you can see they're quite hard to line up, but you need the Velcro all the way to tip to get the contact that you need, okay? So now pulling that down, I'm gonna let that go over the top of the battery, pull it tight, and then the slack can push down, and then you've got extra to actually use to undo it. Now I'm gonna replicate that scenario one more time. I'm gonna pull tight, push it down with my index finger, and then follow through with my middle finger. There is enough room to get my fingers in there. That's very helpful. Doesn't always work that way. And then the two tails I'm gonna touch so that they're easy to grab when I'm done, okay? Now we haven't checked CG either, center of gravity. Of course, that's a very important function of the aircraft and its flight performance, but we're not quite to that point, so we're not gonna worry about it just quite yet. Notice that I cleared the prop so that if the prop would start spinning, it's not gonna catch the edge of the plane stand. That would be dangerous. Obviously at this point, this is where I could encourage you to do the right thing and not like I did, which is take the prop off at this point or don't ever mount it until you're past this point where we actually energize everything. But I'm gonna tell you this right now, I've not been cut yet except for once on a small plane, and I was pretty careful and I still got cut. So just remember that everybody can get cut. And that's probably one of the two main safety features that we need to be concerned about within this hobby. The number one safety feature has nothing to do with the planes, it has to do with the lipos. Lipos can cause fires if they're in really bad repair. And so what you wanna do is keep your lipos in good shape. Also, safe batteries or smart batteries are one of the safest mechanisms to do that because they automatically discharge after a predetermined amount of time. And the number one way to start a lipo on fire is to charge it and let it sit for 4 or 5 or 6 years. Not that I'm not guilty of that. Okay, so now that we're ready to bind, I'm gonna walk back, I'm gonna click, I'm gonna scroll down to bind, and then I'm gonna be ready to bind, but this time's out super fast, or you can turn it off and press this while powering. So I'm gonna hit bind, and I'm gonna plug this in quick. It's probably not gonna work. It's plugged in, we're not really worried about anything other than binding. Bind failed. Okay, so bind, I'm gonna go back to bind. I'm gonna hit bind. Now I'm gonna come in here with my finger, and I'm gonna press the bind button. It's flashing inside. Go back to bind, because this thing times out so dang fast, it's really frustrating. Okay, all right, cool. So as you can see, we've got bright red and green nav lights, very cool. Not really concerned about our control surfaces not moving because nothing is working yet. Now keep in mind, we have flaps that are actuating, but only by happenstance. We don't know what position they're in because they aren't actually set yet. I'm gonna tuck this down inside of here. Make sure at your final iteration, you don't hit your rudder or elevator. And so far that's a pretty dang good fit and very easy to put on and off. So now we can flip this plane over. We can note that there is no stabilization activity going, which means that it's also not auto leveling. So this is a perfect time for us to get the elevator attached. How do we know? We move the controls, they move, but they also don't move in response to environmental impact. So that means that we are in the correct mode for there to not be any correction. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna start with this one. So you need to have something to hold onto the rod again, or the shaft. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, good Lord, 16 half turns. And that's looking pretty dang close. Now what I'm looking for is I'm looking for alignment here, okay? And then I'm looking for alignment with the ball joint. So I'm gonna go just a little bit over turn and then back. Now when I slide that on there, it should give us a centered control surface. Now that doesn't mean there won't be some trimming that needs to be done once we get in the air. And yes, I do have ball joint or ball link pliers. I'm just not using them. Elevator, it's going backward. Okay, now rudder. Same thing. Let's look at the movement. Okay. So we should be good, but then this of course needs to go into that, and you can tell that in its neutral state, it would be over toward where the camera crew is standing. So I need to extend this out. So I'm gonna grab onto this rod. I'm gonna come out 1 half, 2 halves, 3 halves, 4 halves, 5 halves. Too much. 4 halves, 3 halves. You guys may notice I count in halves That's because with a ball link situation, you can only go by halves. Okay? I feel like that's pretty well lined up. You? Mm-hmm. Okay, all right, so rudder. Not even worried about the direction yet. All right, now, let's talk about flaps and ailerons. So flap system has to be set up. So I'm gonna click and go down to flap system. Now I'm gonna set one to plus 100, and I'm gonna set the other to minus 100. I don't care which one's which, it doesn't really matter, I can reverse that. Okay, so that's full deflection, except that we can't get full deflection. You see, it overdrove the servo into the ground there, okay? So we need to be aware of that. So I'm gonna go to the middle setting, and we have to center these now. So this is a complicated part. Okay, so that would be like our takeoff setting, or excuse me, our normal flight setting. And I can tell you right now that this will be takeoff. That's crazy. You're not gonna get much deflection at all out of those things. I think they lined up the splines wrong on those. Because look at that. That's at minus 100. Let's see, I'm gonna show you one thing. Okay, if you go into the servo setup and you go to travel, excuse me, if you go to travel and you go over to flaps, watch. So at 150, you're pretty much all the way down, okay? That's fine, I can live with that, okay? Then this would be takeoff and landing. Yeah, I mean, you don't need any more than that. So it's just kind of weird because you could stay within the 100 range if you just recentered the splines, okay? But I think in our case, we're just gonna get these with the control linkages, okay? So on this one, you can tell that it needs to go out pretty much not much. That's pretty much perfect, actually. I'm just gonna snap it and be done with it. That one's good. See how it's flush here? And it's flush on the aileron surface. Now that one we need to mimic. This one needs to come out, a couple more turns probably. So we'll go ahead and grab this and then just hold tight. 1, 2, 3 half turns. Nope. 4, 5, 6 half turns. Ooh, too much. So 5 probably. So for us, it looks like 5 was about right. Okay, so we can do that. Okay, so that's on there. Okay, so you've got a nice smooth transition. And then when we do takeoff flaps, that's like pretty much barn doors. Okay, so now we need to make some adjustments to the ailerons before we revisit the flap mode. Okay, so on ailerons, we have movement there, obviously. And we just need to go to monitor and make sure we're centered, which we clearly are. Okay, so we can flip this out and we just need to make sure we're aligned here and here. And then I'm gonna work these by hand a little bit. I should have done that with flaps, but I didn't. These are pinch hinges. This one feels pretty worked already. This one wasn't. Okay, so holding that in position, I can lift this, and you need to give them a shot so they can see from my perspective somewhat. You see what I'm talking about right here? This needs to get lined. Here, hold it in front of my face. That's what I'm looking at, folks. I'm saying, okay, I need to bring this out. Oh, good, I can do it without a tool on this one. 4 half turns, 5. 5 half turns. And I'm looking for clearance here. It looks pretty good. Show them from the back now. From right here. So it's even. Got a nice smooth transition. Okay, cool. So that means we can snap this on. So there we go. Now we'll do the exact same process on the other side, which is going to be over here. Now, part of the long format frustration for us here on YouTube is that we do get punished by YouTube. The algorithm will lesser likely recommend our footage to somebody that might be interested in this exact airplane because of the fact that we do long format footage. That means we show the entire process instead of clipping out half of it and saying, it was easy to install this thing on this plane. So good luck. We hope you figure it out. Well, instead, we actually show you us figuring it out. By the way, I'm noticing that control clevis doesn't seem like it's seated. Do you want to show the people what I'm talking about there real quick?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
it's like
I feel like
bumped
it's
up a
maybe
little bit.
not
Yeah.
all the way tightened, maybe. You know what? You know what that could be too? Could also be that that's a flap one.
But the other ones all seem...
Yeah, I know. So what we're gonna do in that case is we're gonna go to neutral setting on this, and I'm gonna take this one out and swap them. Maybe there was a length difference. Let's find out. These are the types of things that you don't have to do, but you should do. And it's very easy to just say, you know what, that's gonna be a pain, I'm not gonna do it. And I don't wanna waste my time because I'd rather be in the air flying. Hey, everybody gets it, okay? I don't wanna waste time on this either. But the thing is, I don't wanna crash a plane over it either. In fact, we might even go to fly this one tonight. I got it. Did I? Yes, I did.
Okay.
Whew, close one. This is a small screw too. Okay, I'm gonna pull this right out. I think that there's actually a difference in length on, I think we missed it somehow. Because this one is definitely thicker. Definitely thicker.
But the other side...
I agree, I just got lucky then.
Not.
I just got lucky. I must have just got lucky is all. See, look. I can't necessarily say this with certainty, but does that mean that this surface is thinner?
It's possible.
Hold on, I'm gonna just buff off the ends of this a little bit. That's a technical way of doing it. Just use the underside of your kitchen counter and you can take care of that. That'll allow us to get better purchase to keep that control horn where it needs to be, okay? And you know, if you think that's bad, just build a dynam sometime.
Yep.
You'll be doing that on every single step. Why doesn't this fit? Why doesn't that fit? Why doesn't this joiner rod go through this hole? So if you guys are wondering, sometimes there are airplane brands that maybe are just a little bit cheaper than the mainstream and you're like, ooh, yeah, I wanna do it. That's one of the best reasons to come to Brian Phillips RC. We will show you the struggle because yeah, we see them too and we reach out to the manufacturers, we talk to them. And guess what? The ones that don't want their dirty laundry out on the internet won't work with us because they're ashamed of it and they're afraid they're gonna get caught with their pants down, and they will. And so they don't send us stuff and we don't work with them. And it works out good because then we don't get a bunch of crap to do that is garbage. And so we work with the reputable brands that are proud of what they do, that make good quality products, that have good customer response times, and they listen to us and they make adjustments, and they're just generally good to work with, okay? And so if you come here to Brian Phillips RC, we understand you're just sorting through a plethora of millions of choices, it seems like, and they all look pretty good online. And why doesn't this banana peel brand, why isn't this one good? Well, I don't know. Get one sometime and you'll find out maybe.
Do you want me to get that for you?
Yeah, if you know where it is.
Yep, it's right
Dropping screws
there.
is terrible. Especially these little ones. So if you guys have come to enjoy what we do here, maybe we've been able to help you along the way in your journey, hopefully into RC or maybe back to RC from a long hiatus if you had young kids and you were just too busy, or maybe you moved to a place where you didn't have a good flying field set up or didn't have the right tools or maybe enough money at the time, or whatever it is, whatever the reasons are that you weren't in the hobby. If you're just coming back, we want to welcome you back to the hobby, one of the best hobbies that you can have. And we're here to help support you in your refound addiction. And I'm gonna actually run those flaps out because I'm having trouble getting that lined up. Now this is just redoing something, so we might pause, do this, and come right back, guys. Okay, so now that we've got that done, we gotta get the aileron reattached here. So we're just gonna get that centered, and we already kind of mostly largely centered it. Looks good. So we can just snap it on here. Okay. So now that we have that snapped, we can go ahead and start working control surfaces. Before we do any more, let's check the gear. Oh, that is so cool. Check the squishy tires. Nope, not squishy. Love it. For a small plane, it's awesome to have retracts. Okay, so now the next thing I want to talk about is that the gear in the backboard position. So because we have the plane upside down, I'm going to click and go into the servo setup, travel, scroll over reverse, and do gear. Now the gear up as expected, gear down as expected. Now I'm going to flip this plane over, put the plane stand to the side, bring it onto the property, Oh, it's so gorgeous. Takeoff flaps. We're gonna mess with landing flaps later. Okay, ailerons are backward. So I'm gonna highlight the ailerons and rotate them or reverse them. Roll left, roll right, that's correct. Elevator's reverse. Reverse that, elevator up, elevator down. Yaw is correct. Tail dragger is correct. So the rudder is correct. I wanna go into servo setup right now, and under travel, I'm gonna go to rudder, turn that up to 150. I want more. Make sure that it's not more or less because of the way that it's set up inside too. If you're curious, elevator up, elevator down, yaw left, yaw right, roll left, roll right. Takeoff flaps, landing flaps. Okay, so now we need to work on flaps. So flaps are kind of a different thing. Oh, by the way, these are full functioning inboard flaps, but on a P-40, they're actually a split flap, which would protrude from the bottom. So on the bigger P-40, they're split flaps. But ironically enough, this flap style works better on a small plane, in my opinion. So flap system, okay, so we have 100, 0, and then a minus 100, okay? Now, we set ours to 150% on the closure side, like this, on the normal flying mode. But then on this mode, it's at 100, but we obviously bottom out. So I'm gonna set this to 0, and I'm gonna set this to like 40, okay? Now, takeoff flaps, landing flaps. Now, let's do this and go slowly until we bind. Hear the noise? Mm-hmm. Noise stops. So we'll do minus 30. So let's see how this looks. Takeoff flaps, landing flaps. It's just too much. I don't even know. I almost feel like it's too much there. Don't you? That's like awfully a lot of flaps for a plane. In fact, it's more than I think we need. I'm gonna do 20. So that is very unusual. Normally I'm all about like having tons of flaps. 40's too much there. See what I'm doing? I'm looking for the takeoff flap setting. I kind of like that. So there's takeoff. Okay, so normal flight, takeoff flaps, landing flaps. I might need a little bit more barn door. That's probably about right. Okay, I can live with that. Now, correction factor. The elevator correction, I usually exaggerate to show this. Okay, so like 43. So now that's way down. So it's going the right direction. So you want the flaps to go the same direction as the elevator in the inboard flap configuration. If they're flaperons, it's actually opposite in most planes. So I'm gonna actually set this to 5 and actually let's do 10. Whoops, sorry guys. Let's do 10 and let's do 6. Mm-hmm. Okay. Just notice this, that's a bummer.
There's a little squish spot.
If you ever get a squish spot like that and it's minor, you can take warm water and get that, but it may actually dimple this area. So be ready to smooth it over with your thumbs. Love the LEDs, look really cool. Okay, great, so we've got that all set up. Now, one other thing I need to check is modes. So now at this point, I can go over to the monitor mode. Nothing's attached to that. That's obviously the flaps, so auxiliary 2 needs to be set to switch D. So I'm gonna go down to system setup, disconnect RF. Then I can go to channel sign. And then on auxiliary 2, I wanna set it to switch D. Okay. Okay, so that obviously made something change. Mm-hmm. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is I am going to check for different behaviors. That's obviously stabilizer or auto leveling. How do we distinguish? That's auto leveling. At the middle of the upside down point, it's gonna change what direction's quicker to get level. Also, the elevator is gonna attempt to level until it's level, and then it's gonna attempt to level until it's level. Okay, so we're obviously in auto leveling. So currently auto leveling is in the upward condition. So I want to change that by rotating the servo position under the reverse. So auxiliary 2, I'm going to reverse. Okay, right, good. So now obviously we have the prop toward us. Just a little safety reminder, my throttle cut's on. It's been tested, but it's gonna get retested now that I think about it. I'm gonna hold the tail, I'm gonna give throttle. There's nothing happens, throttle cut's tested, so we're good to go, we're good to keep going. Okay, so now that we know what mode we're in stabilizer. Now, how do I know if the stabilizer is working right? We know we're not in auto leveling because it's not moving the ailerons violently to try to level the aircraft. But I'm moving the rudder, I can see the rudder go that way, I can see the rudder go that way, the same direction of movement. Elevator, same up, same down, aileron, up, down. It doesn't matter what direction you look at the plane. It's just whatever direction you're moving the wing surface, it should go the same way. That's what a stabilizer does. It offsets the environmental impact that isn't commanded by that thing, okay? So I'm just looking, I'm looking. Okay, now, we're gonna try this. We've been doing this a lot lately and it's been helpful for some of you, I'm sure. Okay, so I'm just gonna look at this real close as I rotate to my right, as I rotate to my left. I'm gonna show you a shot from the top. As I rotate to my right, you see how it turns to the right. As I rotate to my left, it turns to the left. It's kind of hard to see. I want to try a different angle here. Okay, you guys are lined up perfectly with the tail. I just got to get to focus. Okay, now watch this. Now I'm going to rotate as fast as I can. It's going to make me dizzy. I can see it in real life. I don't know if you guys can see it. There's to the right, there's to the left. There's to the right, there's to the left. Okay, you finally saw that time. Okay, elevator down, elevator up. Let's see if I can get an angle for you. It's very hard to do this, by the way. Up, down, okay? Now, ailerons are easy. Up, down. You can see real easy. So up, down, up, down. Okay, now as I go up, it's gonna go up. As I go down, it's gonna go down. Just look at the gap between the flap and the aileron. It's gonna go up, it's gonna go down. Okay, so it's subtle, but it's happening. And the big thing is, if it happens in the wrong direction, it's going to exacerbate the environmental impact. Okay, so that is totally set up, guys. This P-40 is ready to fly with the exception of dual rates in expo and center of gravity tests. So let's do that next. Oh, we're so close, and that is a sweet looking plane. Goodness gracious, it's gorgeous. Okay, so we know what modes are modes. Okay, so stabilizer, off. Auto leveling and stabilization, off. Auto leveling, excuse me, that's just stabilization, off, and auto leveling and stabilization. So we're gonna start in that normal mode. Stabilization, okay. Now, if you wanted to set up dual rates in expo, this is how you do it. Dual rates in expo, I'm gonna set switch F, 5%, then 10, oops. Then 20, moving the rates down to about 90. Then I'm gonna go over to the next control surface. Now, why do we do this? Because we wanna have a middle setting that we can take off into and have half as much or double as much. So why half and double? Because then you have enough to get to the ground and then make your final adjustments. Hopefully you don't ever have two surfaces that are so violently off that you can't get it to the ground. Remember, on a maiden, which is what we film all the time, it's the most vulnerable you are to having something wrong. And so in the world of RC aircraft, you understand the maiden is the most critical time. So as you can see, we've got expo at 10, rates at 100. If our expo is too much, we can always go back to this and have less. It's gonna be more touchy, but you'll have more control authority, okay? At least in the center. You always have the same amount of control authority until your rates drop, like here. Then you're gonna have 10% less at the full stick output. So for rudder, that means you're never gonna get full output until you're in your regular mode. See, not even a distinguishable amount of difference. It's a very small amount of difference. All right, so we're still gonna take off in the middle mode and should be no problem. All right, great. So now the next thing we need to check is the center of gravity, and then everything is working. We know that we have the different modes of action on the stabilizer, and here's what we were gonna show you real quick. If you don't have that additional channel, if you're using the AR620, for instance, what you want, if you want stabilizer, is for that flash to be slow. You see that flash? It's kind of like right down there. It's on the back side, show them real close. See that? Now watch this. That's stabilizer. That's off. That's auto leveling. So solid is auto leveling. Then nothing is kind of like the short on, long off. And then 50-50 medium pace is going to be stabilized mode. At which point you can literally disconnect that channel and it will stay in that mode even if you power cycle, which is pretty cool. I did not know you could do that until recently. Okay, great. So guys, without further ado, the next thing we need to do is center of gravity test. So the center of gravity is listed as what?
You have to find it while you're
Page
hitting.
17. Yeah, I'll get the not the clevis.
Calipers.
Get the calipers out. Man, the sun just came out. It's so
I know.
bright.
I wish it was not windy.
I know.
55 or 45 to 50.
From the leading edge? Mm-hmm. But they show the leading edge. Oh, they're showing it at an angle. Okay, so 55 to 60. So we're going to scroll out 55 on our digital calipers.
No, 45 to 50.
45 to 50. Sorry, folks. 45 to 50. Okay, so now this plane has retracts, so I would recommend having the retracts out for your CG test. So I'm just going to go ahead and make a little bump. Come back here, make a little bump. Okay, and then 50. Mm-hmm. It's a tight range. The Rafale had like a 30 millimeter difference. That's crazy. Okay, so you guys see what I did there? I just made 4 points, show them close. Those points are going to be exemplified by a black dot so that you can easily find them. Some of you guys are probably thinking that is really destructive to the finish of the plane. To all their own. If you don't like the way I do it, you can do it a couple of different ways that work really easy, not the least of which is push pins. But I found that this works very effectively. It doesn't add hardly any weight. I mean, like the amount of ink that got transferred to the airplane, and I can see them years later, which is also a bad thing. Okay. So we're tail heavy on the back hole and we're tail heavy on the front hole. Excuse me, we're about, I would say arguably balanced on the back hole and we are tail heavy on the nose hole, okay? Or on the front hole. So what I need to do is I need to probably slide the battery forward just a little bit. Okay, so 2200 4S, that should be about right. And that's our 30C pack, which is kind of like our go-to normal size. And just so you know, we only use the high C packs if we think we need them or if we don't have anything else charged. Okay, so now on the back one, we're leaning toward the nose. And then on the front one, we're tail heavy. So we still probably need to go a little bit more forward. So you could accomplish that 2 ways. Move the battery forward. And that's the only way because we are pretty much in front of the center of gravity there. Or put a little bit of weight up front. Oh, I can get it further. I can get it further. I didn't think I could. I can. That should be about right though. Now remember, I do have the drop tank on here, so that may not be absolutely necessary here. Okay, on the back hole, we're definitely nose heavy. On the front holes, we're definitely tail heavy. So somewhere in between there is the center of gravity. And so it balances out nicely. Now, small planes, you better be tight and aim for the center of gravity be centered, just saying. Because I've run into issues with the smaller planes, especially with high P factor on warbirds. Okay, so do your due diligence. Now we're gonna mark this. 2200, I've got an arrow. So 2200 4S, okay? And then we've got the edge of the battery here, where the edge of the battery should be, and then the arrow indicates what direction the wire goes, is the way we always mark our planes. And you're like, but why do you mark your planes, Brian? Why don't you just remember that? Well, because we have too many of them. So, we haven't even tested the throttle, so I think that makes sense now that we are literally at the end of the video, so throttle cuts off. You good there? Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. That's pretty powerful.
That looks really good. You can see the
prop.
stickers.
Did we line them up
Yep.
good?
Yeah, that looks good.
So I'll go slow.
Yeah.
Looks sweet. Okay, guys, without further ado, so this is the FMS 950 millimeter P-40, just a absolute looker. and I love the way that it went together. I don't love that that little gun sight got just about knocked off there. And I also don't like holding it with the drop tank on. It makes it hard to hold. But otherwise, I really like the plane so far. Obviously, gorgeous scale looking retracts, flaps, and LEDs. It's almost made for Brian Phillips RC with all those features. And yes, this does come equipped with the Reflex V2, and you will love that. If you need stabilization, you could save a few bucks on the receiver you pick. We did use an AR8020T, which is going to give us voltage telemetry, which I'll show you real quick too. I did not mention that. There you go, 15.9 volts. So that is my pack battery, and then we also have the telemetry for the BEC voltage as well, and that comes on pretty much all of them. So guys, without further ado, we hope you guys like this video. We appreciate you being with us here on Brian Phillips RC. And if you want to help support us, the best way you could do it is to buy this plane or a plane like it from the links in the video description below. Obviously, when you follow those links, we earn small commissions from the manufacturers that make these, but you don't pay any extra for them. In fact, you can use coupon codes or whatever. And if you're curious, hey, is there a coupon code for this particular plane? Best way to know is to check out brianphillipsrc.com. And before you buy, you can check it out. And then when you're at the website, you might find something else that you like even better. But either way, the idea is we want you guys to be buying the best that your money can buy, and everybody has limited budgets. We understand that. With inflation the way it is, everything's getting so expensive, not the least of which is our radio controlled stuff. And we want you guys to be able to stretch your RC bucks to really hit the sweet spot. And I am excited to fly this thing. It's nice. And by the way, the 1.4 meter was really good. We had a hard time with bumpy landings, and so we flew it off of grass. And the last time I flew it, I broke one of the props, and I have the prop, and I have yet to fix it. So one of these years I will, but in the meantime, we're gonna be flying this. So hopefully you guys enjoyed our video. Thanks so much for being with us here on Brian Phillips RC. And don't forget, guys, don't forget to smash the like button. It is one of the only ways that you can fight back against the man, also known as Google, and their insanity. Is just go to all Brian Phillips RC videos and click the like button, whether or not it was 6 hours long. So that's all we've got. Anything you want to add about this, camera crew?
I don't think so.
All right, in that case, come back for more. Thanks for watching.